The report that I'm going to create here is going to use the sales by territory year data set that I created earlier. So I'll go over here, Solution Explorer, once more, right-click on Reports, Add New Item, select Report, and this one is going to be called List Demo. And I'll click on Add, and once again that opens it up within the designer. All right, right-click that, add a data set. I'm going to name this Sales by Territory Year data set. And select that shared data set right there, and click on OK, and that makes those fields available for the report. All right, to start building the report, come over here and select List right there, add it to the report. And once again, put it in the upper left corner. I generally always start with data regions in the upper left corner, but they can be anywhere within the design surface that you want them. So remember that the list starts out with a rectangle container control. So when you first add the list to the designer, it's a rectangle. And you can see that if you select inside and go to Properties, it's that rectangle. Okay. Now the way I'm going to lay out this report is to use only a single group, which is the Details group, and then display various pieces of data in several rows and 2 columns, as well as some totals outside of the group. Now, one of the ways I can start is by dragging a text box from the toolbox to the list, and then select the field from the data set that I want to display. But an easier way is to simply drag a field from the Report Data window, because that causes the designer to add the text box and set it to display the selected field. So I'll do that first with Calendar Year. Drag it over here directly from the Report Data window. And now I have a text box. And once again, I can select that. And you can see that it's in fact a text box. And I'll position that up a little bit higher, right at the top there, and pretty close to the left side. Then I'll do the same thing with the sales amount and drop it. Notice that usually it's easier to drop it and then position it, although sometimes it's a little hard to re-grab it. And within the text box itself there is spacing, so I'm just going to put that right up against the bottom of Calendar Year. Just leave a single pixel there. And then I'll do that with Order Quantity. And do the same thing there, and drop it like that. Okay, so that's a shortcut. You don't always have to add the component and then select the field type. Okay, now the contents of the calendar year and the sales amount fields are going to be pretty obvious from the context of the report, but the order quantity less so. It's just going to be a number out there with commas in it. So I'm going to change the report so that it displays quantity, colon, and then 5,604 or whatever the number is, instead of just the number. So in order to do that, I have to change the default expression. So I'll right-click on this order quantity cell and select expression there, and that opens up the expression editor. So notice that this is not the shorthand notation, but this is the full expression that reads the order quantity, the value of the order quantity field, and reading it from the fields collection, which contains all of the fields associated with the data set for this report. And in fact, if you want to, you can see the other fields here by selecting the fields collection, all of them, and then you can see all of the available fields that are available, of which order quantity is one. And so that makes it really easy to add the other fields here within the expression editor. But in this case, I don't want another field. I want to come up here, put in double quotes for a string, and say quantity, colon, space, end quote, and then the Visual Basic string concatenation operator. So this is going to prepend the literal string quantity to that field reference. That's all I need to do. Click on OK, and notice that now this says EXPR in these double angle bracket sort of things to indicate that this is going to be an expression, not just directly reading a field from the data set as these other two do. Okay, next thing I'll do is select all three of those text boxes, and I just want to widen them a bit, maybe half again as much or so. And that'll accommodate the data that'll be displayed there. And then the list itself, I'm going to select this here and make it just a few pixels higher. And in the final report layout, I can futz with that and refine that. All right, now it's time to start adding some additional rows and a second column to display other data from the data set. Okay, so I have the list selected, and I'm going to right-click the column handle here and select Insert Column to the right. Okay, so now we have another column here. And remember, this is a text box, not a rectangle. And in there, I want to add a data bar, so I'll go over here to the toolbox and select the data bar and drag it into that cell. And that opens up the Select Data Bar Type. As you can see, there's different kinds of data bars, various stacked horizontally and vertically, and you can use columns as well. I'm just going to accept all the defaults. This is going to be a very simple example. Okay, so that creates the data bar in the cell, but doesn't configure it. So now I need to select the data bar, and that opens up this Chart Data window. And so what I want to do here is this is going to display sales amount information. So I want to drag sales amount here over into the values section there. So as a result, the bar is going to display relative sales amount data. So done with that. So now I want to reselect the list, and I want to add a new details row above the existing row to handle or to display the territory and a header for the data bar. So I'm going to right-click on the row handle, but I can also right-click within the second column and select Insert Row Inside Group Above. Inside Group Above, right there. Okay. So notice this is a details row, just like this row is, and it's within that same details group. All right, so I'll select the cell here, and I'll select that list icon, and I'll select the sales territory group. So that's going to display the sales territory, geographical area. And then in the second column, I'm going to add the static text relative sales with a colon. Next thing I want to do is add a title row that's going to contain static text. So here I'll right-click anywhere in the new row that I just added, and I'll select Insert Row Outside Group Above. Notice that I can't do it outside the group below because I'm pretty much at the top of the group. So Outside Group Above. Then I'll select these cells, and I want to merge those cells together. So I just have to select them all and then select Merge. So that merges the two cells into just one cell, and it's similar to what you can do in spreadsheet applications like Excel. So now I'll add the overall title there and call it Sales by Territory and Year. And so now I have a header row. So I'll once again select that, and I want to make the font bold and 12 points in size. Make it a little bit larger than the text within the table. And then finally, I'll also make it centered. I have to display that right there. There you go. Now you can perform all of these kinds of font changes from toolbar buttons, the Properties window, or from the Text Box Properties dialog box. So there's lots of different ways to accomplish what I just did. Now by the way, about merging the cells. You can merge as many cells as you like, both horizontally and vertically, as long as the merged cell remains a rectangle. The only exception is that you can only merge horizontally in the Tablix body, which is the area to the right of row groups and below column groups. It's important to understand that the merge operation drops the contents of all cells except for the first cell. So be careful not to lose any report contents by merging cells together. You can also unmerge cells using the Split Cells option on the pop-up menu that appears when you right-click a merged cell. Okay, so a very useful technique for laying out different components of a report. So now I want to add some additional rows to the bottom of the list in order to display the product cost, tax amount, freight, and average sale fields and labels, as well as one additional space or row. So I'm going to right-click on the last row here, And by the way, I have to either use the row handle here or this column over here, because if I right-click within the rectangle, again, I'm going to be able to insert a text box or a line or so forth, but I don't want those options. I want to insert rows. So I want to insert a row and do it inside the group below, and I'll need to do that 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Then I'll insert the fields. So product cost first. And notice that it's wanting to add the field over to the right. Okay, and add a column. So instead, I'm going to hit Control Z and select the list icon there and do it that way. Same thing here for the tax amount. Here for the freight. And here for the average sale. All right, then I also need to add the static text. Okay, I have the text. Other thing I want to do is right align those. So I'll use that right there. There we go. All right, now I want to change the background color for those 4 rows. It's not wanting to do that very well. Holding down the control there. So I'll just drag the mouse. And I want to change the background color there to pale turquoise. And let's see. Don't remember which of these. There we go, pale turquoise. I just don't work with turquoise often enough to know the color well. Okay, so some of the list formatting. Now I want to add total rows for the sales amount and order quantity fields. So I'm going to right-click in this last row of the list, and I'm going to select Insert Row, Outside Group Below. And I'll do that twice in order to add 2 additional rows. Oh, by the way, something to point out here is that notice that there's no option for inserting total. It's disabled there if I click within one of the columns. That's because this is a list, and it isn't obvious to the component which fields you want to total on. It's part of a downside of the free-form nature of the list. So I'll go back over here, and I'll select the second column of the first of the 2 new rows right there. And I'll add sales amount. Whoops, did that in the wrong place. Wanted to do that down there. I did it within the details group, and so I got that as a field as opposed to summation. I actually wanted to do it here. So I'll select sales amount there, and notice that it adds it as a summation. So this is just a blank spacer row that I added. All right, so I'll do the same thing for quantity right here, and that does the sum of the order quantity. And now I just want to add some static text to identify what those are. So I'll do total sales and total quantity. And I'll once again select both of those and right justify them. Okay, all that's left is to refine the appearance and set the formatting for the numbers. So I'm going to select the total rows here and make it bold. And I'll do the same thing for the sales territory group. And notice that cuts off, or actually displays, part of the label here. So I'll just make that column a little bit wider. Now I need to format the number field. So calendar year is okay. Sales amount I need to format as, need to select that text box. right-click and text box properties, number as currency, same formatting I've been using. Go over your properties and format and copy that. And then I can do that so for product cost and tax amount and freight and average sales and sales amount right there. I can set the formatting. Hopefully I got everything that needs to be done. And then I can do the same thing for the quantity. So I already formatted the quantity within that expression. Make sure I did that. Oh, actually I didn't. So what I need to do here is so that this has the formatting of numbers with no decimal points and with commas separating thousands, I need to use the format function. So I can come down here, common functions, and can look around. There's miscellaneous different kinds of lookups and conversions and inspection and text and so forth. Okay. What I want is format, and so I can double click that, actually put my cursor where I want it, and put a double click there, and that adds the function name and the opening parentheses to the expression where my cursor was. And for the format that I want, I need to add a second parameter with a value of 0 for that style. Okay. All right, so that formats that quantity amount. I have to do it within the expression because I created expression rather than just reading it directly. I can't use the text box properties to set that. But then I need to do the same thing down here to set the number as a number, no decimal points, but with 1,000 separators. Okay, last thing I want to do is rather than displaying blue here, I want to display red. So I can select that data bar, come over to properties, and I haven't actually, yeah, I have. There we go. That selected the data bar. And now I have a color property, and I'm going to select red for that. Okay, that's it. So now I can preview the report. And as you can see, I have this free form report. I have various values here. Now I can align those. Probably I want to align those left. So I'll select all of those and select left format. See what else I might have forgotten? Okay, that looks way better. Okay, that's not showing commas. So I did something wrong in the formatting. I won't go back and correct that. All the numbers look good. I can scroll down here, go from page to page. I'm currently on page 2, and there's my totals. And those numbers look format well. Now the list data region can be a little bit misleading. It seems to be the most flexible and free form of the Tablix forms. But in reality, it's the same Tablix behind the table and matrix data regions. Remember that. And you can do pretty much everything in one form that you can do in the others. In fact, it's even possible to change a table into a matrix, a list into a table, and every other kind of transformation possible between those three forms. It might take some work and some clever uses of groups, but the Tablix really is the shape-shifting workhorse of reporting services design elements.